and welcome back to this episode of the Happya Life Podcast. I'm Clare Deacon. Now, over the last few episodes, we've been talking about permission, about the cost of holding it all together, and about what happens when the roles you've lived inside for years start to loosen. Today, I want to talk about something that often enters the conversation at this point, sometimes helpfully, sometimes not. And that's well-being, or more accurately, the version of well-being we're constantly being sold. Because if you're at a stage where you're questioning who you are, how you've been living, and what you actually need now, it's very likely that the wellness industry has opinions about that, lots of them. And if you've ever found yourself feeling vaguely irritated, skeptical, or quietly resistant to most of what's labeled wellness, there's probably a very good reason. This episode is about well-being without the wellness industry. Not because well-being isn't important, it absolutely is, but because many intelligent, capable people have been made to feel that if they're not finding answers in green smoothies, morning routines, or the latest trend, they must be doing something wrong. And that simply isn't true. For many of you listening, the problem isn't that you don't care about your well-being, it's that the way well-being is presented doesn't reflect your life, your nervous system, or your level of responsibility. You've likely tried the things, you've read the books, listened to the podcasts, done the practices, or at least attempted them. And yet, instead of feeling supported, you've felt subtly judged, as if well-being is something you should be able to optimize, perfect, or perform just like everything else. And if you can't sustain it, that must be a personal failure. That framing is deeply unhelpful because well-being isn't a lifestyle aesthetic. It's not a collection of habits. It's not a moral achievement. And it's certainly not something you earn by being disciplined enough. From a psychological perspective, well-being is contextual. It's shaped by your nervous system, your life history, your responsibilities, your losses, your relationships, and the stage of life you're in. You cannot talk about well-being without talking about reality. One of the biggest issues with the wellness industry is that it often ignores context. It assumes a level of time, capacity, and internal safety that many people simply don't have, especially those who've spent years coping, holding things together, and functioning under pressure. So when someone already stretched is being told that well-being is about doing more practices, more routines, more optimization, it doesn't actually land as care, it lands as pressure. And pressure is not conducive to well-being. In fact, from a nervous system point of view, pressure activates threat, which means that the very thing that's supposed to support you can end up reinforcing the problem. That is why so many people feel worse after trying to do well-being properly. They're already operating from effort and containment, and then they're given a model of well-being that requires even more effort. That's not healing. That's overfunctioning with a different label. Well-being, in its truest sense, is not about adding more, it's about reducing unnecessary strain. It's about increasing internal safety, not external performance. Positive psychology has always understood well-being as more than happiness or productivity. At its core, it's about vitality and meaning and connection, and the ability to respond flexibly to life, not control it. And yet, much of the wellness industry has turned well-being into something transactional. If you do this, you'll feel better. If you buy this, you'll be calmer. If you follow this routine, you'll be healed. That logic mirrors the very systems many people are already exhausted by, which is why it doesn't work, especially for those of you who are already competent, driven, and self aware. You don't need another system to manage. You need permission to relate to yourself differently. For many people at this stage, real well-being begins when they stop trying to fix themselves, when they stop assuming that discomfort means failure, when they stop outsourcing their internal authority to trends and experts on algorithms. This doesn't mean rejecting support or insight. It means becoming more discerning. It means recognizing that well-being is not one size fits all, and that what supports our nervous system may overwhelm another. So I've seen this repeatedly. People who are deeply reflective, capable, and conscientious often struggle most with mainstream wellness culture because they try to do it properly. They take it seriously, and when it doesn't work, they internalize that as being another one of their shortcomings. But the issue isn't their commitment, it's the model. Well-being that's built on self-surveillance, self-improvement, and constant monitoring is not sustainable. It keeps you focused on what's wrong, what's missing, what needs adjusting. And over time, that erodes self-trust. True well-being is quieter than that. It's less performative. It often looks like fewer rules, not more. So, from a nervous system perspective, well-being is about self regulation, it's about safety and capacity. It's about whether your system feels able to rest, respond, and recover, not whether you're following the right protocol. From a positive psychology perspective, it's about meaning, autonomy, and engagement, not perfection. And this is where many people feel a sense of relief when they step away from the noise of the wellness industry. They realize they don't need to become a different person to be well. They don't need to optimize themselves into worthiness. They need to feel at home in themselves again. That often begins with subtraction. Less striving, less self critique, less comparison, and more honesty. Honesty about what your life actually looks like, what your system can realistically hold, what you need now, not what you should need. I'm never a fan of the shoulds. This is especially important if you've spent years in survival mode, because well-being after survival looks different. It's not about peak performance. It's about stability, softness, and gradual reconnection. And that doesn't always photograph well, which is perhaps why it's rarely promoted. If you found yourself feeling resistance to wellness trends, it may not be because you're cynical or closed off or lazy. It may be because you're discerning, because somewhere in you, you know that well-being cannot be rushed, packaged, or prescribed. It has to be lived, and it has to be personal. At Happier, when we talk about well-being, we're not talking about fixing, optimizing, or improving you. We're talking about supporting you to move from survival to something that's more sustainable, to reconnect with yourself in a way that feels honest, grounded, and kind. That's slower work, but it's real. If this conversation resonates and you're looking for a more grounded, psychologically informed approach to well-being, one that respects your intelligence and your life, you'll find resources on my website focused on you, your identity, and how you show up in the world. You can explore those at happiercoach.com/explore/self. It will be in the show notes. And if you've been feeling quietly alienated by the wellness industry, let me say this clearly. You are not failing at well-being. You're just ready for a different conversation. Until next time, take care of you.